Hey everyone, this is John Feneck with the Feneck Commodities Report, and with me today is Terry Lynch, CEO of Power Nickel. In Canada, that ticker is PNPN, and in the States, it's PNPNF. Terry, good to see you again.
John, great to see you.
So we saw each other in Toronto, I guess, a week ago, and we were chatting about the state of the nickel market. Last year, pretty rough year for the commodity, and you were telling me that you're well positioned in this subsector of the commodity world, and I wanted to get a 10-12 minute overview from you, if you would, just telling us about the opportunity, and then I can ask some questions.
Sure, that sounds great. So let's start off the top. I mean, basically, Power Nickel, no surprise, we're in the nickel business. But we're nickel and PGMs, and that's a growing part of our story. So we'll talk more about that. We're both relocated. Well, we're located in Quebec. In within Quebec, we're a little bit south and east of James Bay, and
Okay.
we're super lucky. Quebec's one of the great spots in the world to be exploring for minerals overall, and I would say the best for critical minerals. The reason why are sort of three big reasons. One is infrastructure. We're located off a major highway called Route North, so you can literally drive to the site and off you go. And there's a site right across the road, it's Hydro-Quebec substation. We're 8 kilometers outside the town of Nemaska, which has got a regional airport. It's also the home of the Cree government, which is our Aboriginal First Nations partner. And that's the other thing. Quebec's done a really good job of negotiating with, educating, and working with the First Nations so they can understand that mining can be a pathway to success for their communities. And so as a result, they're partners really in the program. And our drilling contractor is partly owned by the Cree. We stay, all of our guys, when they go home tonight, they'll stay at the Cree hotel that's owned by the Cree. And so we do a lot of business with them, and that's that would be our modus operandi going forward. So it's really good to have that community piece, because so many times in mining we have community unrest and we have difficulties
Sure.
getting permits, and because we can't get a social license. So it's in our area in Quebec, the James Bay Cree, probably considered I would say the most business minded of the First Nations, and they have 4 mines either being built, and two being built, and then we hope to obviously add a fifth. So very supportive, and that's fantastic. And then the third reason why Quebec is so sensational for critical mineral companies is that they have phenomenal and financial incentives. So, for example, we raised some money in January. Stock was around price of 23 cents or so, and we raised money at 50 cents because of the ability to flow through tax credits and deductions to front-end investors that actually sell they sold that unit to the actual investor for 25 cents. So we get like a long-term
Okay.
investor that pays up front, but only pays 25 cents, but sees 50 cents working for them, that they like that. And of course, the company got 50 cents to work with, so less dilution for our shareholders, which is, obviously we're here to create value for our shareholders. So that's a really big thing. So that exists on the exploration front. And then it also exists on the development front. So when we go to build this, it'll probably cost us sort of 300 million to 400 million, depending upon the bells and whistles we put on the plant. And literally, probably half of that's going to come from the government. 30% from the feds in the form of a tax credit, to up to 25% from the province. So, that's pretty much the equity you need to kickstart these projects once you get a final feasibility. So it's pretty sensational operational package to work within in that environment. So, that's a great context. Now, none of that is worth a hill of beans, John. As you know, the number one thing in a mining company is its ore body. Do you have
Sure.
grade, and do you have tonnage? And thankfully, we have both, and it could be really big. So let's talk about what we've posted and what we might hope to post. So we posted in December of this year a 43101, NI 43101, 7.2 million tons. 70% of it was indicated, 30% inferred. Was about 1.13% nickel EQ. So mostly super high grade relative to the market we're in these days. And it
Yep.
was getting better at depth, which is not surprising for nickel, since it tends to get that way, and it tends to be found deeper. So that was our inaugural 43-101. And then we've been drilling since January, I guess, early January, January 6th or something like that. And that's been going very well. We had used a program last year, a very interesting new approach to discovery called ambient noise tomography, and it's done by a company called Fleet Space Technologies. They're based out of Melbourne, Australia. Australia's fastest growing company now. So last year, Rio Tinto spent 24 million with them. We probably spent $500,000. But what they're able to do with that technology, and the reason why it's important for us, is they put almost like it looks like a little landmine, and you put them in a grid-like pattern on your property, about 100 meters apart. Sends a sound pulse down into the earth, 2,000 meters, comes back, is captured as a sound map, and then you're able to correlate that sound map with the other hard scientific data you have. So your drilling data, your downhole EM, airborne EM, IP, gravity, magnetics, all those classic, mining exploration tools. But in this way, by integrating them together with this, measure of velocity of the rock, which is what this does, it gives an amazing 3D perspective of the deposit and gives you great lithographic control. So you understand when you're going from one rock type to another rock type. And if you're lucky, you develop a signature for your deposit, and we did. So that we saw that, in our case, ultramafic rock is where our nickel sulfides are hosted, and they're hosted within iron. And basically it measures about 4,300 meters a second as a velocity. And where we found that the deposit was actually dropped was when the rocks dropped off velocity wise from 3,600 to 3,750. So almost on a one-for-one basis, this was located there. So then, what that did for us is, because we did a 4-kilometer survey around Nisk, Maine, which is a 1 square kilometer project at this point in time, and we have 46 square kilometers. But we did this first survey around this first 4 kilometers around Nisk, Maine, is identified, several ripe targets for us to go after. So we think these are our best geological targets that we've had to date, and we're busy drilling those up. And the other thing that we did, we also had last April stepped out almost 5.5 kilometers from Nisk, Maine, and we had a discovery we call the Wildcat, and it contained almost an ounce, well, over an ounce of PGMs, mostly platinum, almost 21 grams of platinum, and at 60 meters, so virtually surface. And so it was a winter target, so we couldn't follow it up until now. And we've, I think, produced a couple of press releases since then that talks about the success we've had in the step outs. So we've been drilling more, so it's been going great. So my guess is, I don't know, we'll probably be 500,000 ounces up there, in the next 43-101 update already. So, and this is like from surface to 200 meters. So, and it's open. So that's a super exciting kicker in platinum, because platinum is one of the, the commodities that's, it's likely to do well here in the next little while. And it's obviously high value rock. And frankly, it's not a bad thing to have in a nickel deposit, just to make it, shine a bit more. I mean, I'm a long-term bull on nickel, but as you know, nickel had a rough go last year. I mean, it basically fell by 40%, and the Indonesian sort of supply came on, and coupled with the reduction in demand in China from their real estate sector, led to a bit of a crash. And so, how it goes in this business. It's never as good as it appears, and it's never as bad as it appears. So I would say with nickel right now, it's not as bad as it appears. And in fact, I make the point to people that nickel has got some very different characteristics around the world, not the metal, but the markets. So nickel market in China is one thing, nickel market in Europe is another thing, nickel market in North America is a completely other thing. And you only have to look at the deal Samsung did with Canada Nickel to know how different that is. So they just did a deal in January of this year where they committed to, hopefully a 2027 mine that Canada Nickel hopes to build, where they invested, I think, 20 million US in the equity, committed to invest 110 million in the project, where they would own 10%. I think when they invested the 20 million, it was market cap was around 200 million. So that the commitment to the project is saying, hey, the project's going to be worth $1.1 billion, for 10%. So that means
Yeah,
that
sure.
I would have to go up a lot to catch up to that. And then they were going to buy 40,000 tons of nickel a year. So I mean, substantial commitment, right, from a major.
Right.
And so I've been actually, to Korea just in the last 3 weeks, met with this very same group, the very same guys, and they told me this is only 20% of their demand that they need in 2027. And I met with other leading Korean battery companies, told me the same thing. So
Right.
I think if you're in North America and you have North American nickel, especially in our case, it's a high grade. So for example, the average grade on Canada nickel is like a 0.25. So we're at 1.13. So obviously they have a big ore body, and we have a not as big ore body for sure. But the grade is your friend, and the IRRs that we'll get out of the feasibility study that we're doing right now with CVMR, I think will be very eye-opening. The IRRs on a Canada nickel type project was around 18%. So Samsung committed to investing into that. I would think would be well north of 50. So that's the type of thing that makes people excited about investing. And I think that the other element to our story that just stepping back for a second, obviously we've got the growing ore body where we've got the 7.2 million tons. We've got these great targets we're drilling now. We're adding more nickel tons. We're adding obviously a lot more ounces of PGMs. And the key message I would say to folks is that step up with 5.5 kilometers, that meant that whole area is charged. That was the biggest thing. And what happens on these nickel PGM projects like Norilsk, which is the biggest mine in the world, the only $1 trillion deposit in humanity, it is basically a nickel PGM deposit. And what happened there is, at depth, something big was cooking, and they were firing up these PGM fireballs to the surface, and they land, and they enrich the deposit, and that's what happened over there. And so we see the same thing happening here. Do we have the next Norilsk? Well, that would be fantastic, but that would be a bold statement. But it happens, and it's the fact that we stepped out 5.5 kilometers is phenomenal. And I say to people, I don't like to take a lot of risk. I like to take a little risk, but I want a lot of upside. Okay.
Yes.
And I say to people, power nickel right now, you're buying it for, I don't know, 20 cents on the dollar, something ridiculous of what we've already found, not what we might find, or not even what we're drilling right now that we've disclosed, but what we've sort of put on the books. But
Yep.
the upside in this thing is ridiculous. So if you can, find a way to get into those leverage situations where your downside is very minimal, but your upside is really mammoth, then those are the ones that should get you to look. I've been saying to folks, I was asked, at the Vancouver Resort Conference and at PDAC, what do I think of the market? What should people do? And I said, you know what? It is a crappy market, but it's so crappy, or as Rick Rule says, the cure for low prices is low prices. Now is the time, I believe, for people to get off at least half their wallet. And what I mean by that is that, when you go from bad to less bad, that's almost the best move, because you'll often double, and then it'll happen like in days. And I know what happens, because I've been on the other side of that thing, where I've been watching some stocks and I'm, chincing around for a couple of pennies, and
Right.
then all of a sudden, boom, the move happens, and I liked the team, I liked the deposit, I liked everything, but I was nickel and diming them, and it jumped, and then I can't bring myself to get back in that play. And then the thing runs, and it's a 5 or 10 bagger, or a 20 bagger, or a 100 bagger. I've seen these things, and honestly, it staggers the mind. But it happens to people that should know better. I should have known better, but didn't. And some marking, the psychology is hard to do. And so I'm saying to people, if you've got some stocks that you've sort of identified, whether it be power nickel or some great gold company that you looked at, or a silver company or a uranium company, whatever you think, or and if you can't bring yourself to bear to buy an individual stock, then invest in some good mining funds. Invest in,
Right.
Palace Capital. Invest in CI. Invest in McKinsey. Invest in BT Global. These are really great fund managers that have done great work over the years. They'll do it again. So you wouldn't feel like you've missed the whole ride, because if you're sitting on the sidelines and this thing runs, you're going to miss it. And your jeopardy right now is maybe you're in a little bit early. Maybe you got to wait a couple months to get a double. Is that too long? I mean, I
No.
think we have to start encouraging people to think like this now
I
as
agree.
an industry. And I know that there's been a lot of negativity, and we're trying to deal with some of this negativity, but the really good companies will find value in this cycle, and it'll happen quicker than you think. And I think for us, as we look forward in this year, some of the key things that we're doing in addition to the drilling is we're doing a feasibility study right now with CVMR, and CVMR is got 18 plants around the world making refined nickel products and iron products as well, and they're basically they're paying for the feasibility study. They're one of the world's foremost suppliers of nickel powder. So the things that the battery companies need most is nickel powder. That's even better than MHP. So
Right.
so there's a lot of interest in this. When I was in Korea talking to them about the products that we're going to be producing jointly with CVMR, they are quite keen. So I think there'll be some exciting news coming out on that in the next little bit. I think that we'll have a report out from CVMR on their first set of recoveries from the analysis of our ore body. We'll expect to see something in the order of 90% recoveries, which is significantly better than our 43101, which is 70%. So they have a bit of a different process that enables them to get to that level. And
Okay.
I think that that'll be a big movement for us. So and then the final thing to talk about in terms of investor I guess signs or that they should look for. Obviously, we'll have assays out on the Wildcat holes. Will come out in about 3 weeks. Those should be epic, and I believe that should be very much in line with what we had previously reported. And then in about this, probably 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have the CVMR report. And then, of course, we announced that we were spinning out our copper gold subsidiary, which is basically in Chile and in British Columbia's Golden Triangle, really high-end sort of copper gold exploration plays. And we're spinning it out as a private company initially, dividending it out to our shareholders. We're doing it as obviously because copper gold exploration is a different animal than nickel development. That's the fundamental reason why we're doing it. Second reason we're doing it is that people have forgot that we have it, yet these are significant assets. They used to trade at this market cap without the nickel deal. Today, probably from a valuation perspective, because of the downcast market, we'll probably be putting them out at like $6 to $8 million or something like that. And our shareholders will get half of that, and then ultimately Power Nickel will flow the rest through over time. And the thinking is we'll put it out as a private company first because we believe there's a significant short position in Power Nickel. We filed a press release in to that respect, with Ciro and with FINRA, and that we think one of the ways to trap these guys is by giving them a dividend of a private stock that they can't replicate. Because naked shorting,
Right.
often that seems like a confusing term. It's just counterfeit shares. It's people selling stock they don't own and not delivering it. So what happens is Power Nickel has 150 million shares outstanding, give or take. There may be 200 million in the float out there. But when you get the dividend, the only guys who are going to get the 150, their percentage share of the new co will be the guys that actually get evidence that they are actually Power Nickel shareholders, i.e., they have DRSs, they have certificates. So that's a fact. That's a 1 or a 0. You can't fake that. Can't paper it over with electronic IOUs like the investment banks do. And so that's when the monkey will come home to roost, or the chicken, I guess.
Okay. That's a great update. Just taking that last part first, what time frame would you say that someone would have to buy Power Nickel in order to get the spin?
Yeah, the way it works is we have to we'll be producing an offering circular, we think, by the end of the month, and then it will call for a special annual general meeting in mid-April, and
Okay.
and then if it's approved which we expect it would be approved, since more than 50% is owned by 6 people, including myself and a few others, and we're all on sides, so it's going to get approved. And then I think the date of record will be somewhere in sort of mid to late April is my guess. So but that'll be set out in the offering circular.
Okay, that's great. I think that's important for everyone to note
Yeah,
because
yeah, for sure.
copper, gold, copper just broke out yesterday. Gold is
Yeah,
kicking, you know what?
yeah.
So that's a nice little sweetener for
Yeah,
shareholders.
no, I think it's going to be sensational. 'Cause the ambient noise tomography guys that we use, Fleet, at NISC, uh, when we did the due diligence before we hired them, their most success where they cut their teeth was on the deserts in West Australia, finding copper
Okay.
and lithium. And so, I'm thinking, as they're going through their spiel, selling us, I said, well, what about caliche? Because in desert exploration, that's one of the big problems. It's basic caliche is like mineralized limestone that sits in the base of the sand, and it obstructs IP and gravity, which is IP and gravity are generally the most broadly used, scientific instruments to, plan a greenfields exploration program, I would say. And the problem with it in the desert is this caliche makes it unusable. So that's why the desert hasn't been searched a lot. Okay. And so when I asked them, I said, well, what about caliche? And they said, we don't have a problem with caliche. So it's like, wow. So you can get lithographic structures, which is what you're looking for, because you'll have some theories about where copper might be or where gold might be or whatever on these structures based upon other analogies in the neighborhood. But you weren't able to identify the structures because you didn't have the IP or the gravity. But now this could identify the structures. So we've had them down there for the last 2 months, and they've identified some wowies. So we're super excited to explore that in the new entity, and we think that could be a phenomenal upside because again, we used to trade at these levels for that exploration. This is like really great dirt in Chile.
Interesting. Okay. And something else to mention, just based on what you had said about 50% owned by you and five others. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah,
So yeah, one of the things that we look for is 30% or higher ownership because it would block a take under, right? We saw
yes,
that with Marathon recently, where they didn't have that strength, and Caliber swept in and took them out for a very very attractive price. I don't think definitely us, but most investors don't want a 25% return or 30% takeout on Power
no,
Nickel. They're
no,
buying this
that's
for
multiple
multiples.
baggers. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So that's very important to note. Another thing that you had mentioned was your 43101, which came out around end of November, early December.
yep.
I think people should take a look at that because that'll set the stage for your feasibility study. And can you
Yep.
tell us a time frame? Not exacts, but like what kind of.
Yeah, so we're expecting that or in definitely H2 and hopefully early H2. Uh, we have to do some more core drilling for them to get more ore, as it turns out. And so we're doing that. We're finishing up Wildcat. We've probably got another 2 weeks or 10 days left of weather up there, where it's still going to hold up temperature wise, and then we'll have
Okay.
to move the rigs to and that rig that's finishing up at Wildcat will go and drill those metallurgical holes, and it's not much. It's like maybe 500 meters, maybe even less of met holes, but we need to add that additional core for CVMR. So they're waiting on that to finish it off. So we'll finish that off.
Okay. So somewhere maybe by August 31st, roughly.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. Um, Tell us a little bit more about the tax credits, because I think Quebec is a jurisdiction. Not all of Canada is created equal. So
Right.
I think yeah.
Yeah, a couple of key points to make is that I think a lot of investors outside of Quebec hear that and think, oh, that just doesn't apply to me. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's the way it used to be, but they changed the rules a couple of years ago when they developed these charity flow through buyback deals, and now it's made it possible. So you have a front end of the deal and a back end, and the back end can be anyone, can be investors from Ontario, from British Columbia, from the United States, from Switzerland, from wherever in the world, Australia, and they can come in and be the back end, so they can get the benefit of the tax breaks. So that's really important, right? Because I mean, everyone wants a bargain, so it's like,
Sure.
now you can take advantage of this, and that's why, I mean, we've just been blessed, honestly, to be in Quebec. It's a great jurisdiction because, we've been able, when you're raising money and doing it largely 2 for 1, it's a much more attractive sell, so even despite
Sure.
what's been a difficult market, uh, we've been able to, fund our growth, and obviously we've executed with it, and we haven't got rewarded yet, but we will. It's all because of this tax credit system that they have in place.
Interesting. You mentioned about your ambient technology. I read a little bit about that. You were saying it measures the velocity of the rock, right? So
Yeah, so it's
how
like
many other
seismic in
junior,
that respect.
okay. How many other junior nickel companies are using something like that?
Well, you know what? We learned about it from Talon Metals.
Okay.
That's what tweaked my interest. Actually, an investor of mine, I do watch Talon's press releases anyway, but he tweaked, this is a tech investor who's become a mining investor, friend of mine. He said, Terry, I just, watched this Talon Metals news release. It looks like pretty cool technology. What do you think about it? And I looked at it, and I thought, don't know anything about it.
Mhm.
So I called Fleet, and of course they're in Australia. So it took a couple of days to get a hold of the guys, and I said, look, your technology sounds cool. We're doing a nickel project that's again ultramafic like Talon's. It's in Quebec. Maybe there's a fit here. Sell me on why we should use you. And so they sent me a white paper, and I read it, and it's pretty heavy reading, but a couple
Sure.
hours, and it was like made sense to me. But I mean, I'm not a technical guy, so I could be easily fooled. So I recognize you got to recognize what you know and what you don't know. So I
Of
brought
course.
it to my scientific team. Ken Williamson, who's our VP of exploration, and GeoVector, who are our very fine execution team on the site. And actually, in actual fact, they were both negative on it because they
Hmm.
were thinking that, hey, if I do this, I wouldn't do downhole EM, I wouldn't do magnetics, I wouldn't do all the other. And I said, guys, look, I'm the last guy that wants to drill. I want to eliminate areas because science has proven that it's going to be super low chance of success. That's what we do
Right.
this stuff for. So I said, we're going to spend money on the other stuff, but look, you got to get into this, do your homework, meet with Fleet, listen to their pitch. I said, Talon, whatever else you can say about Talon, the stock is obviously a whole other issue, and their community problems and stuff. But the geological team has done a great job. Like these guys are smart explorationists up there. And I said, they're not doing this because of some stock promote. They did it because they thought it would help them find nickel quicker, cheaper. So I
Right.
said, these guys are like top tier, top of the pack of nickel explorationists in the world. So based on that, let's maybe learn from them. So they dug back into it, and they said, wow, it's good you pushed us because it looks really cool. And then we did try it, and it's been great. It has really been fantastic. I'd say it's, you can't, like all of these things, there's no guarantees, and no one technology is going to solve everything for you. But I think it's a very valuable add-on to the geological toolbox. And I think it acts as almost like a bit of an operating system. If you think about, like, when Microsoft Office, before it started, we had, some draw program and a basic financial package, and then we had a paint package, whatever. And then Microsoft Office came in and just made it easier to integrate everything together. That's sort of what this does. It integrates all these technologies into one, and then it adds this velocity measure, which is a really great lithographic sort of identifier. And a lot of really good things happen when you're changing rock densities, and that's really usually the faults are on these seams of the various types of rocks, and that's where you find your treasures. So this has been, I think, very instructive that way. And so what it does, really, from our perspective, is it identifies high grade targets, okay, that you got to test, okay, and
Right.
they'll either be there or not there, because they'll be Mother Earth. She's a crafty devil. She's always got another trick up her sleeve. But the idea is that you want to be taking the good shots, that are scientifically justified, and some will work out and some won't. But you don't want to be taking bad shots. You know what I mean? You want to be taking ones that have possible really high impact and get to them quickly. And I would say before would have been drilling 10, 15 holes. Now we drill one or two. You know what I mean? It's huge
Yep.
savings, and we either define an area that's of interest to us, or we move on.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I asked about it, because you see drilling costs going up substantially since COVID, and so I think juniors have to be more mindful of every single hole and what that costs, and it's hard to raise money. You've been in a really good position, I think, based on your track record and your ability to raise capital, getting Rob McEwen, into the stock and raising money along the way when other people have struggled. Yet, you don't want to be frivolous with it. So this technology seems
Too
like it
hard,
would
too
help.
hard to get it. Too hard to get it.
Yep.
And you really gotta, and in this market especially, people will recognize the guys that put it into the ground and
Sure.
delivered some impactful tonnage increases, impactful ounce increases, de-risk the properties. You got to do that, because there will be a rebound, and it'll be a savage rebound, and then those guys will get seriously rewarded, and we want to be one of those guys.
Yeah, I think you will. I mean, when you look at your chart versus some of the other juniors out there, I mean, it looks really good. I know it doesn't feel like that to you and to the other five guys who own half the company, I'm sure. But what I'm saying is 14 US has held. And so you're kind of what I call in a channel right now, where you're just bouncing for months
Yeah,
between, say, 14 and 20 cents US.
yeah,
But maybe, that those assays on Wildcat in 3 weeks, that might be something as a catalyst, of course. And then you've got the FS coming up in the summertime. And hey, nickel prices in general might just rebound based on the concept of more of a soft landing, right? Because if we were to have this interview a year ago, you're looking at a soft landing probability of probably 10 to 15%. Now it's over 70.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing that will come out of the Power Nickel story is Power Nickel's not just going to be a junior miner. We're going to be a refiner. We're going to get
Okay.
into finished products. And to give you the big reason why, nickel today, I guess maybe it's 18,000 a ton in London. Uh, Nickel powders, 80,000.
Wow.
So where do you want to be, man? So
Yeah.
so before that was never a possibility for a nickel junior, but because of the changing conditions in North America and the supply dynamics and the need for control of supply, that's why we got approached by CVMR. A banker sort of hooked us up, and we met, and they're just great guys to work with, and their business approach is JVs. They have JVs across the world with many times with governments, and they have two JVs with the U.S. government, in the Department of Defense. So these guys are very experienced. They have like 4,500 employees. The U.S. $100 bill, it's printed on a plate, nickel powdered by these guys in Toronto, if you can believe it. Quite a story, quite a funny story behind that. But yeah, I mean, so you can imagine the scrutiny you'd have to go through to be anywhere associated with the U.S. Monetary plate, it's pretty impressive. But yeah, and they do, for example, where they have the research centers doing the like in Sudbury doing the basic scientific research. They have these multi-million-dollar nickel tubes, 5/9 purity. They made those. So they're probably considered, I would think, one of the top technical nickel producers in the world. So as a result, they're getting high-end products. And people think nickel. They think, oh well, EVs are down. Maybe they don't need as much. And I say, the guys that were calling for 50% of nickel being electricity or battery demand in by 2035 were mad. I said that was not possible for a variety of reasons, electric grid being number one. But 25%, and this thing will be rocking. And then the other thing that people forget is that like in CVMR's business, their powder business is going 29% a year, 29% a year,
Wow.
because if they're using it for not only in batteries but in 3D printing and injection molding, where they use they basically use that for the injection molding powder to to fabricate, parts, etc. So, Tata, the big Indian company's monster in that business, and they're like actually building a plant in India now as a result of that. So there's a lot of growth technologically in nickel that's transformative, and people will, I think, like I say to people, nickel is uranium. You were laughing at uranium 5 years ago. You're laughing at nickel now, and it's like, don't you wish you had picked up some uranium stocks? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
absolutely.
And I 100% think it's going to happen here for nickel. I think it's going to happen for North American nickel quality plays sooner, just because we've got a better market here and a differentiated market. And if you got some PGMs, even better. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, congratulations on that platinum find. I mean, platinum is
Yeah, that's just
looking good. I mean, the charts hold up quite well versus some other commodities. I mean, it isn't where people want it to be, including myself, but it isn't broken. And so,
right.
that's going to be taking more of a role in catalytic converters and other things as the next, 1 to 5 years, play out here. So I think that's great. You said about 500,000 ounces.
Yeah, we think so. I mean, and then within the nickel deposit itself, we've got about probably another 250 or so, right? So it's like I said to people, my own internal feeling, and it's obviously, this is a guy who's long the stock, not selling, but a believer in what he sees as possible. Like historically in Canada, the high grade nickel sulfides examples, Lynn Lake was 22 million tons, Voisey Bay is at 140. So I see us somewhere in between there is likely where we'll end up with Power Nickel, and I think that I've said that I believe we'll find a couple million ounces of PGMs. I mean we're almost we're probably going to get there to 1 million ounces this year. So it's like I mean back in the day that used to be a PGM company,
Right.
so and here we are. I don't know, our market cap today is like 30 million Canadian or something disgusting. And you just want to chew off your arm. But I mean at some point, as you say, luckily we've got defensibility because we have the core guys are not in this for it to go to 30 cents. We're in for
Right.
multiple dollars. We believe that that's very, very doable in this thing. We believe the refinery thing is something we can get into, and this could become a really, big and productive company, and make a lot of cash money for our shareholders.
Great. Well, hey, let's wrap it up with talking about April 30th because I'm an advisor to a conference in Washington, D.C. that is April 29th through 30th at the Marriott Marquis downtown D.C. And you and I are going to be on a panel together April 30th talking about the opportunities and the challenges in the junior market. And one of those challenges you pointed out earlier, which is the naked shorting. I would also add the downticking in our sector, that just runs rampant here, it seems, for the last 18 months plus. So I'm looking forward to trying to expose, or educate investors as well as companies, about this problem. Can you, leave us with a few thoughts on
Yeah,
what
for
you're seeing?
sure. I mean, it's amazing, John. We were chatting yesterday with the Northern Miner people who are part of the event and just discussing, the topic. And I shared a couple of insights there with you. And what I found in the last just few weeks is some really startling facts. And it's so bad, it's good. So let me explain. So in my mind, you and I, and all the people that are listening here, we're all equal as investors. We're equal as human beings. We're equal as investors.
Yeah.
And I always thought, I mean, these bots are a real pain in the butt. But I just assumed that they were acting the same way as you or I, that they had to deliver stock and they had to close and do all this. And I never could figure out how the hell they did it, but I never thought that they had different rights than you or I or anybody listening. So that is not, in fact, the case. They have different rights. It's sort of like that Animal Farm book where all animals are created equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The bots are
Right.
more equal than us, and it's crazy. So let me explain what I learned.
Okay.
So I learned that if you have a bot and you rent a pipe from a broker like CIBC or Merrill or TD, where the
What does
big
that
pipe.
mean, just for our listeners, like rent a
So
pipe?
so you rent their internet access to the
Okay,
markets. Okay,
got it.
so they have streamlined access to the markets where they can trade electronically on various stock exchanges.
Got
And
it.
so you rent pipe to pipe, and you have to have a certain size. I don't know what the criteria is. It's obviously probably not for individuals unless you're like mammothly wealthy. But so they rent this pipe, but with that rental, they get short exempt status.
Hmm.
What does that mean? Well, it means that if they want to, if they have a bid they want to hit and they don't have the stock, they just hit it anyway because they're short exempt. As long as they keep their supply margin requirements 2 for 1 or whatever it might be for those stocks, they can just keep on pounding those bids. So we always wondered, like, like we would put out like mammothly impressive news. Like when we put out that we stepped out 5.5 kilometers from our core deposit, hit 8 meters of 1 ounce materials. I honest to God thought the thing was going to triple that day. I thought, okay, this is going to be the big breakout day. The stock went down 20%. I mean, it was like
Wow.
I honestly, I was on a Thursday, I remember, and I just took Friday off. I was like, I just needed to recover because I was like emotionally trashed,
Sure.
But it's like none of my guys sold, none of the like, and I know probably 80% of the float really well. You know what I mean?
Right.
And because I've talked to most people, and I know that these guys see that this can be worth dollars, not and they're looking for that return. And so, I mean, who's selling on news like that? These bots are selling. That's the
Hmm.
answer. Okay. And we've proved it with our evidence that we filed with Ciro and FINRA
Yes.
about the naked shorting. So there's no longer, in my mind, subject to debate. So that's short exempt. Okay. So that's a problem. So I talked to Ciro, or we had somebody email Ciro and say, hey, you know, these bots, they've got short exempt status. How is that fair? And they say, well, yeah, but they're only supposed to trade nominal positions and directionless. Okay. So we say nominal positions, like, that's like big or small. It's like quite relative, like to an ant, a pebble is big, and to me, it's small. So what is nominal? Is it 100,000 shares per exchange? Is it 20% of the average daily volume? What's the deal? As it turns out, they don't have any definition for nominal. Okay.
Hmm.
And from what we know, nobody is actually, doing any sort of checkup on the directions. That's just not being chased down, and it
Yeah,
gets
that's
worse. It gets worse. And I guess share one more thing, and then we can move on. So I was at the CSE luncheon at PDAC, and the main topic was naked shorting. And I feel like I was talking with somebody the other day, and they said, you probably should call it counterfeit shares, because people don't understand naked shorting and think naked shorting is like, does somebody get naked? Like, it's like, but
right.
counterfeit, everyone understands counterfeit shares or counterfeit currencies. People understand that's
Right.
what happens in naked shorting is people are counterfeiting power nickel shares or somebody else's shares. Okay. So
Sure.
maybe that's something we should be thinking about, because that's what happens. That means that power nickel's got 150 million shares actually legally outstanding. There might be 200 plus million or 220, or it's like GameStop or that whole thing. So that's
Right.
what happens with counterfeit. So I was talking with Richard Carlton, who's the CEO of CSE. And he said, Terry, he said, we obviously brought you here because we think it's a big issue. And he says, and we obviously believe you, otherwise we wouldn't have had you come. And we see it in many of our listings. But he says, I got to tell you, I talked to Ciro, our regulator, and they tell me it's BS. This is just noise. That there's no significant amount of failed trades. So how can it be? And he says, I'm trying to think in my mind, like, who's lying? Is Terry lying? Is Ciro lying? He says, you both seem like honest guys, and I don't think either of you are lying. So I just like trying to put it together. So he said, I went back to Ciro and I said, I don't really understand this failed trade thing, and it's like,
Yeah.
so exactly how does it kick in? And walk me through that. And Ciro said, well, in fact, we don't identify the failed trades. It was like, what? You don't identify the failed trades? No. It's basically it's self-reporting. the banks that allowed the failed trade have to report it. So think about that for a second. It's like I commit murder, I don't report it, there's no murder. I mean,
Mhm.
it's unbelievable. So when
Yeah.
you put that together with the nominal positions, and it's all too cute. Okay.
Yeah.
It
Sure.
means these guys, whether they plotted it or somebody has gamified it at this point, it doesn't matter. It's got to change. And what we got to
Right.
do as a group, as an industry, is we have to get them to ban the bots, and we need to pick a price point. It's 500 million, I think, for sure, or worst case 250, but maybe it could be a billion, somewhere in there. Pick a price point where you protect those companies underneath that, so you let them actually grow up and become either big or small, and let capitalism work, because it did work before. Good companies
Sure.
get discovered and get bid up, bad companies crash and die. And that's how capitalism should work. Right now, really good companies are being killed. And as a result, investors have fled the space in droves. I mean, it's great news, I think, for guys listening today who are thinking, hey, maybe there's an opportunity here. There is an opportunity, because this thing is so bad and it's now so egregious. And now we know stuff we did not know. Eric Sprott didn't know this. Other key people didn't know this that I told to. They were all shocked. I'm in shock. I did another interview today on this, and I was like, I'm just appalled. I mean, we just gotta demand change, because it's so egregious.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And can you give out an email address for everyone listening to just, because I know that
Yes.
you're working on the website, Save Canadian Mining,
Yeah.
but
So you could email me at terry@savecanadianmining.com, and we will the website is alive. It's not a work of art, because Save
yeah,
Canadian Mining is a completely volunteer organization. There's nobody. It's only been
right,
funded by its company members, and some funds from other people. But we're actually going to, because it's so critical now, and we've got this great intel. We're going to gear up, and we're going to have a major push. And the push is going to be on something simple called ban the bots. It's something we think everyone can get behind. We're just going to
mhm,
ban these bots. If we ban these bots, all of a sudden these downticks that you talked about at the front of the show will not happen. We'll actually have a civilized market that normal price discovery can happen, and
right.
that would be a good thing.
I think that'd be a great thing. So, for those listening, precioussummit.com is the conference I'm referencing, April 29 and 30. Terry and I will be there speaking, I believe, at the lunch slot, April 30th, which would be 12 to 1. Could be in the morning. I'm not there. They don't have the exact schedule set yet, but it'll definitely be April 30th, Tuesday. So, feel free to reach out to me. The contact details will be at the end of this, or you can reach out to Terry at the email he just provided you. But I think that this is a real issue, and we need to know more about how we can handle it. And any companies or clients listening that have had experiences like this, it would be really great to connect.
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, everyone needs
yeah,
to get involved. We need hundreds of companies to get involved in their shareholder bases, and it's honestly the best IR you can spend is to get involved, to communicate to your people, because people are wondering, why is this
right.
otherwise great company that I believe, this management team, I trust them, they've done good work, yet the stock sucks. So,
Yeah,
so
but it
why?
sucks on very low volume. Let's be
Yeah,
clear about that, because like a lot of times I'm watching in the US in the morning, not the Canadian ticker, because in the Canada I hear it's happening in the last minute of trading generally. In the
yeah,
US, it's the opposite. It's that the front end will print something 10%, 12% lower than the previous close on literally somewhere between 100 to $300 worth of total capital, meaning, if you're a 5 cent stock, it's a 4,000 share trade. It's like ridiculous. Who's like opening down 12%, who's putting a market order in like that? It's not
yeah,
happening, because then I watch the bid go literally 8%, retraces 8% of that immediately. Like it's just, it's like, so the market makers that are getting paid a lot of money to help companies like yours are not doing their job properly, combined with this nefarious action.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the regulators have actually hamstrung the market makers. If you
Have they?
try yeah, yeah, if you actually try, I know one market maker is going before Ciro now, because he with, whenever it comes down at the end, they're trying to, they're trying to push you down. He's trying to support the stock, and
Yep.
they're busting him for supporting the stock. Like, and
Yeah.
within, we're not talking anything egregious. This is like all within normal course, but it's just like they, they're working for the bad guys. They don't know it. I don't think Ciro or FINRA is inherently evil, but I think that they've been gamed. They've been
Yeah.
gamed by the system, and of course, nobody likes to be embarrassed, and
Right.
unfortunately, we're embarrassing them right now. I'm not doing it at any joy to embarrassing these. There's fine people over at Ciro and FINRA, and we went lobbying very quietly, very politely for 2.5 years and got absolutely nowhere. So, and our, markets got more trash than ever. So we got no choice. We either
Yep.
get, aggressive and get like, very, creative about our social media campaigns and embarrass these guys, because we need the change. And,
Yeah.
and I'm convinced it's the political, we have to get the politicians, they're the key, because they need to tell these guys, make the change. Just
Right.
like South Korea as a country, they decided that, hey, naked shorting was a problem. They shut it down.
They
Boom.
did.
You know what I mean? And that's what we need, courage from leadership like that to shut it down. And other
Yeah.
countries are following the suit. So, I don't know if you saw today, JP Morgan, I think it was, got fined $250 million. Did you see that?
Hmm. Yep. That's a
So
start. I
it's
mean,
good. It's a start. I mean, it's probably just a
yeah.
fraction of what they made, but
Oh,
still, that's
well,
a
yeah.
significant chunk of change. That's
They're
going
the
to hurt them.
largest
They're
bank globally, and so from working there for 6 years, I know that to them that's like a mosquito bite, and that's the problem, right? It's
yeah,
like we need that to be on the front cover of the C section of the journal rather than buried on page 29 or wherever they put it, probably,
right, 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 right.
because it's just not gaining enough traction. It's like the silver short kind of, or the
Right.
guys that I have a background in silver, so I get a lot of questions about why don't you talk about the manipulation more, and I'm like, well, what possible stuff am I gonna, like it's not helping to talk about it for years and years and years. You can see that, just look back, right? Like I
Yeah, yeah,
can
of
talk
course.
about it until I'm blue in the face, but unless we take action, like what you and I are talking about, where we're
Yeah,
going to, like when you look at some of your shareholder base, Rob McEwen, billionaire,
yeah,
Eric Sprott, billionaire. These
yeah,
people have influence much more than I have, and they can
yeah,
go out to their networks and say, hey, Terry, John, these guys like care, and
yeah.
we're not trying to get kudos here. We're trying to
No,
fix our
100%.
sector because it's like broken right now. And
Yeah,
if you're looking at it 10, 12 days an hour, like 10, 12 hours a day, like you and I are, it gets you down a little bit because you're like, hey, is there any way to change this? And I think there is, or
yeah,
else I wouldn't be, spending energy on it. And so I'm
yeah.
looking
I
forward to it.
agree. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that, the time has come that this is so egregious now, and it's so obvious that, reasonable people can't oppose it anymore. And then you start to get the masses behind it, then the politicians will listen, because they're
Yeah.
voters. And that's the message that we're taking to the politicians. Either you're with us or against us. We're not going to go with this, let's do a committee and no, no, that's bullshit. South Korea shut it down. You need to shut it down.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
We're not talking about shutting down, short selling. We're not talking about shorting down everything. We're talking about shutting
Yeah.
down within a
Just
limit of
just report
the
it.
smaller
You know,
companies so that they can grow, and
report it.
yeah, and
I remember
tr- you know,
2016, you could
d-
look at not just a Bloomberg terminal, Terry, but like you could look at a free website like shortsqueeze.com and you could see First Majestic 12% short, Coeur d'Alene 13% short. You could say,
yeah,
wow, this is like higher than normal. Now, when I look at those same stocks, it's all between like 1% and 5%. It's
yeah.
like that can't be right because I
No, no,
mean
no.
it's
That's
just
definitely not.
there's
Definitely
there's a
not.
lot of funny
That's the honest shorters. That's
right.
somebody who's hedged the position in some way. But no, the real short market is vastly different. Wes
Hmm.
Christian, who's won 11 lawsuits, settlements, not lawsuits, correction, because
Gotcha.
they never let you, win. They buy it out before you close. Uh, he says the average company is short at least 30%.
Wow, that's crazy. I
Yeah,
mean, when you
that's
look
great.
at something like Newmont trading down to 29, 2 weeks ago, you think like, When you look at shortsqueeze.com and see 1 point something%, you're like, this can't be right. This thing's got a 5% dividend and it's the number one holding in GDX. How is this possible? It's actually in the S&P. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just crazy.
it's just
Yeah,
unreal.
yeah,
And so I think we're just I think it's time to educate the public and other CEOs about what's happening if they're not aware.
yeah. 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
So as always, Terry, it's a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you in person next month. And would you just talk to the listeners about your website, give them the
Yeah.
where to go?
So for Safe Canadian Mining, just go to safecanadianmining.com. For Power Nickel, powernickel.com, and we'd
Easy
love to
enough.
see you there. And look forward to talking to you again soon, John.
That's great, Terry. Thanks a lot. And this is John Feneck with the Feneck Commodities Report. Thanks, everyone.